Okay. A copy of the draft minutes of the March 13th, March 21st, and March 23rd meetings have been posted on the city website. Before we get to departmental reports tonight, we're gonna have two hopefully brief presentations. The first is from Mid Hudson Cable, who want to let us all know what's going on in the city recently. And Rachel. Okay.
Yes. I did bring copies of the presentation if anybody wants today.
I'm sure they'll all want.
Okay. I know, I haven't changed, I'm not married, but I just haven't changed my last name. So that, yeah. Yes. Please, maybe for you, will you read them? This is for everybody anyway.
Thank you. Margaret, is your hand up for a reason now?
Yeah, yes, it is. I checked before this meeting, were these materials made available to the full council and the public?
No, that's not really essential for a presentation like this, since we're not voting on anything. But there will be.
But we don't vote anyway. What is this presentation?
I just mentioned it. It's Mid Hudson Cable telling us about their recent project.
Okay, but usually we get monthly reports from different departments. We're not voting on them, and I don't understand why this presentation was not made available.
Okay, well, I thought I explained it. It's not a department report. It's a special presentation from Mid Hudson Cable.
Okay, and will this be on screen?
That's why we couldn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, we have hard copies here. But I don't think Michael has a copy. We'll see.
You can share what I gave you also, you know,
Yeah.
after the fact, whatever.
Yeah, we certainly.
Um,
Okay, please start, Rachel.
sure, so basically, I'm Rachel, I'm stand up.
Well, I think it's better sound if you're closer to this is the owl. that picks up
Oh,
your-
yes, the owl, I'm familiar now after all these meetings, but, so I'm with Mid Hudson Cable, I've been with the company for about 15 years. I'm in community relations, so, and I also have Vince Randazzo with me, he's our chief engineer. And we are just currently in the process of rebuilding our network, and we are converting our entire network to fiber. In the presentation, there is some explanation about fiber and you know, but basically, we've rebuilt the network, I think, 4 or 5 times since we've been in operations for 52 years. We are no longer building coax, so fiber is just we're building and what we're converting to. The city of Hudson currently is, anybody is able to convert to fiber at this point, the city.
Within the city, we're finishing our last small area to upgrade, but yes, everybody in the city can convert it.
So we have been trying to get the word out. There's been you know, some reluctancy on customers' parts, just because I think if they have a service and it's working for them, they're not interested in changing. There will come a point where they have to change, just because, you know, we're gonna sunset the coax at some point. But we've found that going around to the different municipalities lately that we serve and just letting them know that this is happening and it's coming has been really beneficial, because a lot of people didn't know, or they just don't have a good understanding of fiber and why it's better and why that's the direction we're moving in. Just as far as the community we serve goes, I just mentioned we've been in operation for 52 years. We became an employee-owned company in 2018. So all of this change comes along with that. We employ about 100 people. All of them live in either Columbia or Greene County. We gave $100,000 back into our community last year, just through charitable giving. I worked with some of you, and we get a lot of requests, and just another thing that I want the communities we serve to be aware of, that we don't have a process like a granting process or anything. You can just come to us and let us know what's going on and what type of donation you're looking for, and generally I'm very receptive to that.
We can't actually do that, but.
Okay.
others can.
Okay, well, I know some,
Yeah.
yeah, not for profits and, you know, I'm sure some of you guys work for places too that, you know, is always looking for funding.
Fire department got in.
Yeah,
Yeah, good. Fire department. Did you
definitely.
hear that? I don't think you heard that.
Nick, he just said he's gonna use fiber to get you a boat.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
And I just, Vince, do you want to say a few words about the upgrade and?
Sure. Like Rachel said, my name is Trent Azam, I'm the engineer. This is the fifth time that Hudson has rebuilt the plant with their own capital. We're using these state-of-the-art materials that the other big providers are. Which allows much wider bandwidth for on upstream and downstream, as opposed to coax. One of the areas, I just mentioned, not all of the city is done yet. One of the areas I wanted to address was downtown, Hudson Terrace, Skylar Court, low rise, high rise. These areas are sort of be underground. The last time we upgraded about 15 years ago, we worked with the city to bury new cables through the streets. And we're at that point now, we're gonna have to do that again. Place those coax cables with fiber optics and conduits. That way we've always got a path through there if something's wrong or want to change again. But we'd like to work with the city on that again. And maybe you can point us in the right direction together with the.
There's the head of DPW right there,
Okay,
Commissioner.
Commissioner, maybe I can spend a few minutes with speaking to afterwards, but we're looking forward to getting this area done.
Right.
And this will wrap up the city of Hudson that will be upgraded.
So basically, your presentation was just to alert the entire city that eventually you'll be all fiber. And it's, so everybody has to contact you to get the conversion?
Well, especially the city of Hudson residents right now, if they want to contact us and, you know, check to see if the conversion is available, which most of the city is, that would be great because we would love to get people on the schedule and get them converted. With fiber, we are rewiring, so it is a little bit extensive and that might be why some people are hesitant, but.
Rewiring from the line to the house.
That's correct. Every unit will now receive a fiber optic wire to the house. And then from that point, the coax wire is replaced with Ethernet cable on Cat 6.
Yeah.
Now, if you just have an internet connection, it's pretty straightforward. You run one line, put a new device in. But if you have TVs, it requires more wiring. And it's a challenge with a lot of MDUs here. Some of your bigger units, some of the issues we wanted to address downtown. So
The pricing was the.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that also. So with the fiber conversion, one thing that is will be really beneficial is every customer will see a significant speed increase. So I'm talking, I think our standard speeds are gonna be 500 by 500 symmetrical, which comes up now from 350 by 10. And they will not see an increase in price. And the fiber conversions we're also doing completely free. So there's no installation charges or anything like that. And again, you know, we'll see the increase right away. So we will also have, you know, other higher speeds available in different packages, but that is one thing that we're excited to be being able to provide is no price increase in that and instant upgrade.
And what percentage of the city has been converted to fiber so far? Do you have an idea on that?
yeah, I have a picture with me. I have a map, but it's approximately 70 to 80% completely done.
And then who's activated it? Like what percentage is
Oh, who gets
activated?
converted?
That's converted.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have that number. I could get it for, I can get it for you. I'm gonna give you guys all my card, so I can let you know.
I asked just because like, I think that a lot of the reluctancy, right, would be, you know, I've had Mid Hudson, you know, I've had you get, you know, for years, right? And I think my line has been down maybe twice.
Right.
So it's like, I don't want to change it.
Some people, you know, especially like people who are into gaming and a lot of things like that, they're very excited about getting the additional upload. So they've been like, you know, very eager, but a lot of people I think do have this mentality of like, mine's not broke, I don't need to fix it.
And what is the general uptime been across the the new infrastructure, like,
We've spent the last 2 years working on downtown Hudson. And like, I believe, aside from that downtown piece, within the next 30 days, the totality of the city limits will be done. With the exception of the underground I was just talking about.
and then, but in terms of like, what would be the total like uptime, like, is it generally as available as the coax
Oh, the
system?
reliability,
Yeah,
it far exceeds the
That's-
coax, because we eliminate all the power supplies from the
Yeah.
plant. We're reliant on power from power companies, and everybody here lives in a rural area, knows power goes out from time to time. We have stand-up batteries for each location, but they only run about 4 or 5 hours. So we make the attempt, and a lot of times they work. But this is not susceptible to that,
Right.
because the lasers start in our office, and they're all DC.
That's probably one of the biggest questions we get is when there's power outages, if you have power at your home, you may not understand why your services are out, and it's because the power's out at a location where your services come from, and it's not gonna be that way with fiber. They're all direct connections, so that's one thing that's also really good. Another challenge we face with Hudson specifically is that there are a lot of landlords, and, you know, while a tenant may want to convert, they do need landlord permission, and, you know, in some cases, some of the landlords are just very hard to get a hold of or get the okay for us to start rewiring in their buildings.
right.
So,
And the challenge is some very old buildings.
yes, very old, buildings, very old wiring.
We want to clean up, you know, everybody's seen those wires around. That's part of this process, is to clean that process up. And we have products available now that are very innocuous. They go along the edge of the wall, you don't even see them there. But once again, it's getting the landlords, property owners to participate with that. You know, we're not charging them anything to do it, but getting them to, you know, commit to the time to do it's difficult.
Margaret, you have a question? Margaret?
Sorry, Ronnie had his hand up before I did, so Ronnie, you go ahead.
Thank you, Margaret. I guess my question is just not reiterating that, like, clarifying what Malachi was asking. So, you're saying that the lowest tier, the internet that is available, it's going to be upgraded to 500 megabits per second up and down, and that's going to remain the same price. Is that what I understood?
Yes,
Okay, yeah, I don't see why anybody would really fight that, because even I think it's 200 is the lowest tier right now, and upload speed is only like 4 to 8 megabits per second. So if anybody doesn't want to upgrade, they'd be foolish
Yeah.
to.
we found there's just been a lot of like misunderstanding and misconception around the service, just fiber in general, and so that's where we're trying to do a better job going around to all the municipalities we serve and just like using you guys to get the word out.
Go ahead.
You okay?
Margaret?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, for the benefit of the public, if the presentation that was handed out to I'm unfortunately unable to be there this evening, but for the benefit of the public, if whatever you handed out to the council would be made available so that it would be on our website so the public could see that, I would like to.
It will.
Yep, and then secondly, I moved here in 2010. I've had Mid Hudson cable the whole time. It is my only internet provider. I have your business level service and so forth. To my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mid Hudson Cable is the only internet provider available to residents of Hudson. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No,
I've looked into other options and have not been able to find other options.
Verizon's an option as well.
Yeah, Verizon is an option. we are the only high-speed internet provider via coax.
I'm talking about high-speed internet.
Yeah, and that's, that is because this area and, Columbia County, Greene County, all these areas that we've served for the last 50 years, it's not desirable for other companies to come in and spend the money to rebuild.
Yeah,
And
so
that's-
No, when I've looked into it, in order to have proper high-speed internet that would enable me to do business work, your organization was the only one available to me. And so I think given that kind of monopoly situation, that it's really important to make sure that everything is made very transparent to the public. And particularly this presentation you've got tonight, this plan that you've got to go to fiber and so forth. I would really like to see that made very publicly available. And I'm a little disappointed, Tom, that this was not posted before tonight's meeting. And also it was not on the agenda to my knowledge.
Yeah, well, none of those are required, and it's really, will be out there. first thing.
I'm not talking about what's required. I'm talking about what is desired.
Margaret, move on, please. What were you saying, Malachi?
I was just saying, Shaheem DeJesus also has a company that he's.
Yes,
fairly
figured it
new.
out.
Yeah, he offers a wireless solution.
Yeah, that's why I was saying. Okay, well, Rachel, thank you very much.
No problem. And
thank you.
you all have my card, just send me an email if any of you are interested in finding out a timeline for your address, or if it's already available. And I can get you hooked up with our sales department right away. So if anybody is,
What generally is the timeline, like the lead time to get somebody out, like?
depending on, usually, right now, I think we're only booked, honestly, like a few days out. It's really not bad. But as the word gets out and we ramp up and things like, it may go out further. But yeah, just send me an email and I will get you hooked up with our sales department.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we have another presentation, but I'm not sure they're here yet. Yeah. Please say your name.
Michelle, do you know if BSJ is coming online soon?
No, I think they're thinking 6:30. They had another meeting right before this.
Okay. We'll move around. Okay, the first departmental report, gentlemen from the fire department, you wanna step up, 1 or 2 or 3 or?
Yeah, all right, so we have 49 calls last month.
Sean, can you come a little closer, because I don't know if it'll be picked up by this.
Want to stand out here?
Yeah. Don't be afraid.
No. All right, we had 49 calls last month, 25 came false, 4 good intent, 6 service calls, which are mutual aid calls. We had 1 vehicle accident, 5 power line problems, 1 carbon monoxide incident, and 1 gas leak. We had a motor vehicle pedestrian accident, 1 EMS assist, and we had 2 fires, 1 being a dumpster and 1 being an incident down at the train station, very minor fire. Last month, we started doing our SOPs, they're outdated. We needed to start them. I put the committee together with Commissioner Hutchins. It's me, him, the 2 assistant chiefs, and 2 past chiefs who have 30 years of experience in time, and so we told to have them done by the end of the year. Other than that, I'm pretty quiet. That's all I got. You got anything, Tim?
So update on the sale of the old ladder truck. We have Dayton, Ohio will be here Wednesday afternoon to look at it. I believe it's a chief and their mechanic who's coming. So we're hoping that that goes as planned.
Price? Yeah, what's the asking price again?
It's at 149. They have to go through it and figure out what's that, and that money's already been approved to be for equipment for the fire department. From 2 years ago, they got approved to install it, so that's what they bought it out for the fire department. And then next month, tomorrow night, we have probably our last meeting for the new truck. So next month, we'll probably have that on your desks for approval to purchase the new engine to replace the old rescue. As of right now, that's the plan. We'll have, hopefully after tomorrow night, we'll have a better idea if we're good to go on that. So.
Great. Any questions from council? Thank you, Nick. Okay, moving right along. Liz, I see Liz York somewhere, there she is.
Didn't bring a lot of these because nobody wanted them last week or last month. I don't remember. All right, so I don't really have a super long report this month. Kind of one of those in between times, but just a few programs of notes. We just finished up the 6-week program with the Sylvia Center. They were doing a cooking class with our 5 to 9-year-olds. They made a variety of healthy snacks and foods while learning kitchen and knife skills. It was a really great class. The kids seemed to enjoy themselves, and Sylvia Center is looking forward to working with us again as we're looking forward to working with them. So hopefully that's a continuing partnership. We also started our partner classes at the Hudson Hall. We've got students participating in storytelling through movement and in musical theater improv. We have some kids signed up for the community choir as well, but that happens outside of program hours. Oh, sorry. That happens outside of program hours, so they're not going while they're with us, but there's a few signed up for that as well. So that's going really well. The kids are really enjoying it. And it's just right down the alley, so really easy to get them there. We're still doing summer camp. I forgot to update the number. We're about 80 kids registered for camp so far, so we still have lots of space. Again, we've still got this on our website. We've got flyers available at the front desk. We've got flyers sent out to the school, and next week we're going to start calling families that we know usually register but haven't registered yet, just to make sure that nobody misses out. We have secured busing transportation with the help of the county, so that we're going to have that for daily transportation, and we're in the works on getting some field trip transportation that's a little bit more expensive than anticipated. We're going to do at least one big trip though this year. Feeling ready for that, and hopefully people are. I will not commit 100% to Zoom, though it does seem to be in the top of the list.
Wants to be a chaperone, yeah.
Nice. If you chaperone, I'll put together a group of kids you watch it. But yeah, probably Zoom, but at least one big trip. The Oakdale updates, we're doing again our rewilding project on April 29th. It's the first of 2 this spring. So that'll be at 10 a.m. under the pavilion. We'll meet, we'll do the usual, talk about what needs to be done, hand out tools, form teams, and then go out and get to work. We're gonna have snacks and drinks as usual, so hopefully we'll see you there. We are not doing it the week before, which is Earth Day weekend, because of Hearth Day. Is that how we're saying it? Which seems really cool that they're doing it at the waterfront, and it's gonna, or where are they doing it?
Water.
The waterfront. I know that we are the rain location, so if it rains on the 22nd, we'll see you all at the youth center for Earth Day, but that seemed pretty cool, and we didn't want to have competing events, so we're gonna be doing the next weekend. And if it rains on our weekend, it'll be the next day instead of at the youth center, because can't beautify Oakdale at the youth center. Another update for Oakdale. So I don't know if you guys remember, in the summer, we had one of our programmers come in and do a sound mapping of Oakdale summer camp. So she came weekly and she took the different age groups of campers and counselors out, and they kind of recorded different sounds or had different conversations throughout the trails in the park. And so that was put together in a really beautiful recording that was played on the local radio station. And now it's going to be a kind of interactive walking tour. So there's going to be like different things that you can scan, you can walk through, you can listen to it as you're walking, you can be in the areas where the recordings were made. We're gonna have an unveiling for that on Sunday, May 7th at Oakdale at 2 p.m. So we'll put that up on our social media as it gets closer so you guys don't forget, but I wanted to get that out there. It's gonna be pretty cool. The recordings were really amazing. And really, it's really great that the kids did a lot of the work themselves, so. Community engagement, we were lucky enough to have the Hudson Fire Department come visit us at our after school program. They stopped by and visited with our 5 to 12-year-olds. The kids learned about fire safety. They met the firefighters. The firefighters talked about what to expect, and they also talked about fire safety. They were given the opportunity to try on the gear and climb on the fire trucks and drive the one truck, which was very exciting. Kids had a lot of fun. It seemed like they were really inspired, and I think we might have some future firefighters. So, some other community engagement that's a little less relevant, but still really fun. Stewart's Ice Cream does this really fun thing where Stewart's lets you color pictures, and then you get a free ice cream. And so we did that with the kids. We had a little coloring party, and then we took in small groups to Stewart's and got free ice creams. So that was really nice. And if you want to do it, they're still doing that until the 16th. You can take the coloring pages in. So let me know if you need one. We'll drop one off. And then just the last thing, we're still looking for a secretary and a food nutrition coordinator. So you can email me if you know anybody who's interested or if you yourself are interested. They're both full-time civil service positions. They both have an exam that goes with it. So it's a really great opportunity. City benefits, all of that. And we're also still hiring. We've had, I think, 30 applicants for our summer counselors. So we're going to try and encourage some of them to be lifeguards instead. Lifeguards for sure. We can never have too many. We're on track right now, so fingers crossed. If everything actually goes right this year, be open for Memorial Day weekend. So we're doing our first training starting really soon. So if you know anybody who's interested, anyone from 16 to any age where you can still swim, come be a lifeguard at Oakdale. That's it.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks.
Maya, anything to add?
Just a couple of things. Thank you, Liz. I just want to really impress upon everyone if you can join us for the rewilding project. I know a number of council members have in the past. It's an incredible opportunity to get into the park and really see all of the work that has been done, and especially as we're moving into efforts to address the whole park through the beach house project and then the north side of the park. So there's a lot going on, and just getting in there and really valuing it and helping be a part of ongoing work projects. Love to have you there. And the other thing I would like to do is just thank DPW Commissioner Rujano and Superintendent Rob Perry for getting in some toddler bucket seats at Promenade Hill and Charles Williams Park. So I really am grateful for that and making those spaces available for our youngest citizens in the families. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Maya.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. Council members.
I wanted to just ask you about that, that we talked about, last week about the policy changes. Just a question, because I know that, the youth department has always been, just a foundation for, poverty-stricken people to be able to utilize, that building on, days that's needed, but especially on holidays. But I know that you had talked to me about just the change in policies of, my question would be, I guess, who makes the changes and who, is there a committee that comes together and decides what the changes are gonna be?
Yeah, so Calvin and I talked about it, and being open on holidays, we have to staff that, and so we can't really, ask our staff to work on holidays, and then we pay them any time and after it's supposed to be off with their families, and so not being open on the day of the holiday is the easiest for us to be able to facilitate. So,
Yeah, I know it's gonna be disappointing for a lot of families. I know they depend on, in the past, I know, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and that sort of thing is
yeah,
kind of disappointing, really. Yeah. And come up with something to,
I mean, it's not like we're saying we'll never do it, but right now, the way things are going, the policy has to be that, because we just can't make it work.
Boy, also has to be on holiday day too.
Yeah, the time and a half day for them.
Other questions from council members?
Liz,
You're not a council member, Bob.
okay.
No, I'm sorry, manager.
Liz, you said lifeguards, so if somebody like President Tom Hasselhoff applies, you think there's a spot for a lifeguard for him? I heard he's a good swimmer.
Yes,
Oh.
and if he's gonna work with us for the summer, we'll pay for his training.
There you go.
Great. And I'll pass. I didn't park there. Okay, let's move on from all the council members, no other questions? Okay, moving along.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Leah,
Did you see my hands up?
yeah, but you're not even supposed to be here, so just according to,
Hello?
Leah, do you have a report for us?
Just a little bit. We're still having our regular Aerobics classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is still happening at the senior center for the rest of this month, but as of May 1st, she's going to be having it down at the waterfront at the gazebo pavilion area like they normally do every year. So that'll be starting May 1st at 10 a.m. for the aerobics with Lynn. And everything else is still on schedule. The Zoom classes, yoga, that's still going to be the same, but the only changes that's happening is just the aerobics is getting moved down to the waterfront May 1st.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Council members, any questions?
Hey, what time is the, those aerobics?
10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay, before we go on with other reports, the second presenter is now here, BFJ Planning. Michelle, would you introduce them and explain why they're here?
Sure. So the part of the anti-displacement learning network grant was looking at housing policies to preserve and increase affordable housing. So we had a small sum of money that we used to hire a consulting firm to help provide some more research and analysis onto some housing policies. So this was a competitive RFP that we released. We received 7 responses, and we selected BFJ, who's a consulting firm based in New York City, but they've done work in our area. They worked on our long LWRP plan, for example. And so we gave them 5 deliverables, looking at revenue for the Housing Trust Fund, looking at the city's vacancy law, looking at inclusionary zoning and incentive zoning, and then looking at community land trusts, and just asked them to kind of analyze. I kind of have done a lot of work on the pieces, but getting another set of eyes on certain recommendations. And so they have those 4 memos, and then they created like a working like Excel spreadsheet for us to calculate some financial feasibilities. So the 4 memos are uploaded on the city website under housing resources if you go to plans and studies. So if you want to read more of those, they're up there. But then Thomas Madden is here tonight just to give a brief overview of some of the key recommendations or insights they found from those memos.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Mr. Madden. Unmute yourself, please.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Michelle for giving us the opportunity to come work for the city of Hudson again. I got to say this project was a lot of fun to do, especially looking at the city of Hudson and looking at how much it had grown since the last time we did the LRWP on this. So as Michelle said, we had 5 tasks that we did, analyzing the financial feasibility, public revenue sources for the Housing Trust Fund, looking at the existing vacancy law, governance structure for, community land trust, and then looking at a temporary housing, affordable housing overlay. And one of the first things we did was we helped create a gap analysis worksheet. And this is to basically help the city of Hudson as you get projects coming in. And when we looked at the initial sort of 41 areas in your area in the city that have potential, we thought, okay, this would be a great way to actually analyze everything. So you can actually put all the information in. You come up with your overall matrix within the number of units that you're looking for. So this will help you determine the right mix of matrix, and then as well develop the cost and the mix of incentives that you're going to need. In the end, it comes out with what your gap in financing. And so Michelle and I walked through a couple different projects just to take a look at how this would work. And so as you start to look at development projects or they get before the boards, you can actually do a complete financial fiscal analysis of that project to see, okay, where's that gap in financing, or if there's a surplus in funding, and where you want to invest within the city itself. So it's a pretty complicated worksheet, but it works very well in terms of spitting out an answer at the very end. Our second part of our second task was to look at federal funding. And so we tracked down sort of 3 areas. One was the federal, state, and local sources. So, the feds have the Housing Trust Fund money, HUD Exchange money. State has about 24 opportunities for affordable housing, Housing Trust Fund funding. And then just a quick example, we said, there's some local funding sources that the city could consider, from general obligation bonds to lodging and hotel tax, local optional tax on housing, or payment in lieu of fees or fractional payments for inclusionary zoning and changes to zoning. And those are all outlined in our phase 2 task 2 memo. We basically said, to looking at your next steps is to build out for the Housing Trust Fund is, getting back out to local, state, and federal government officials, alert them that you have a housing trust fund, and then requesting help accessing both federal and potential looking at changes on how you deliver that local money to the Housing Trust Fund to start developing affordable housing within the city itself. Phase 2, we also started to, task 2 was examining the existing vacancy law and make suggestions for potential changes and best practices. So it was interesting as we started to research this, we saw that there was really 2 local laws that you have. One is targeting the vacant properties and buildings, but you also have a short-term rental law. And so these are, as we saw the city sort of talking to people, felt these were the 2 issues contributing to, degradation in the quality of life neighborhoods and residentials, and the lack of the residents be able to find that affordable housing. In reviewing the vacant building law, we thought it was really essential to look at both the short-term rental law and how the funds are generated and can be applied with those revenues to increase your housing supply within the municipality itself. So chapter 91, the vacant building, it was really to identify and register the overall vacant properties and buildings. And we remapped this for Michelle. We pinned out about 41 of the current listing that we had from the building inspector. As well, we developed a new sheet for the building inspector to be able, a new matrix to be able to dump all that information into, and to be able to collect the information that is actually required by your law to be able to track down some of these people so that we know that they're paying. From there, we looked at of really the short-term rentals. And it was interesting as we started to look at the housing, we found it's really the second home area for a lot of people from New York City. There's 201 units in private rooms, hotels, and about 366 just for Columbia County, ranging in night from $126 to about $1,200 per night, with availability in a lot of these places from 30 days to 365 days. So some of that housing that we notice is available that could be used for affordable housing is actually being used as rental housing. So someone from outside the community, from what we were looking at, the assessor records, has bought up that house and is just renting it out, which then takes it off the market. So people who are looking for affordable housing or looking to buy a house, it is not available to them. One of the conclusions that we came up with is maybe there need to be some changes to the overall fee structure for both laws to increase those fees to be able to put into the Housing Trust Fund to help fund affordable housing, as well as potential changes to budget allocations and the way the law was written up and where those budget allocations go to help fund more affordable housing. The other thing we suggested was really the city should make sure you get your yearly audit reports to the mayor and council as specified by the law. To get that update every year, I think is really important. So you have a good idea of what's actually happening within the community itself with both of those, the short-term rental law and the vacant buildings law. Our next task was just to provide a governance structure for an affordable housing plan as part of creating so on 5 different rental sites. This was probably our most lengthy one. I think it came in at about 350 pages. But what we said is, if you're going to have a community land trust, there's sort of 4 phases that you need to do to really set this up. So initial project implementation, lay that groundwork out, get your project launch, formally establish the community land trust and build upon that infrastructure. Phase 3, initial operations. Phase 4, operation of phase, which goes into your continued growth and the positive community impact. And again, we outlined in very specific detail as part of this memo, how the city of Hudson can move forward with that. So we took it as also you could take a regional approach to this and actually partner up within the region, or you could take a local approach with this and outlined how that each aspect would then work within the city of Hudson itself. Our conclusions really were there's numerous well-established community land trusts throughout New York and the nation that you could partner with. One of the things we did note is just because of budgeting, economies of scale, and cost sharing benefits, it does make much more sense to collaborate with a regional entity. And the city may also want to consider both home ownership and rental programs as part of its community land trust. So when you look at a lot of the community land trust owns the land and then builds the affordable housing on it. And to address both the vouchers from Section 8, but also to get people, to address the population, is to get them with that home ownership to build generational wealth. You look at both sides of that with that community land trust. And then as well, recommendation to grant analysis opportunities as one of the initial steps to help start funding the community land trust. Our last task was affordable housing overlay zone, and to look at, how do you actually prevent, include a temporary affordable housing overlay zone in the interim before you do your plan of conservation development. And it was interesting is, so as we read this, you'll see that we did the original the local waterfront revitalization plan, and everything in the white is where you can actually do your affordable housing overlay. Everything outside of that is not defined. And so one of the things that we, suggested, there's sort of 4 key things that you need to look at. One is defining that geographical area. So you've defined it already, but it's not inclusive of the entire city of Hudson itself. You must also define the threshold for the number of affordable units or affordability levels required for the project. And that goes back to our first task, is to be able to look at the overlay zone and the different incentives for that gap analysis, which we provided you. Third is to define the incentives given to the qualified projects. And then lastly, looking at the process itself, we identified that there's areas that really need to be streamlined for permitting and approval to be able to start moving your affordable housing forward. So all said and done, I think we submitted to you about 500 pages worth of work. And the budget was about $11,000 on this. And so, we gave you a lot of information. And I've told Michelle all the way along here, I'm here to help synthesize a lot of that. So as you move along, you can rely, sort of come back to us and ask us questions. We're happy to help you out with this, because we think the affordable housing within the city of Hudson is really, really an important issue. And that's one of the things that our firm really, looks at is helping our communities that we work with to move a lot of the stuff that we write up into actionable plans and to move forward with a lot of this stuff. So that was a quick, really synopsis. Tried to keep it to 15 minutes here. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on the tasks that Michelle had us do.
Thank you, Tom. First question is from Margaret. Margaret? Unmute yourself. Margaret, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself. Yeah, thank you so much. That was a very interesting presentation. So again, I come back to the fact that when I looked at the agenda for this evening and the materials that were presented, there did not seem to be a great deal on the agenda tonight. And I know many people who would have been very interested in seeing that presentation, but since these materials are posted,
It'll be up on the website tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be, Tom, but the point is, no, that's not the point.
You get your point. Your point is not really relevant, because there's really this information has been on the website. And what can I tell you? There's no requirement to have an agenda that lists.
Tom, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about requirements here. I'm actually not talking about legality or requirements. What I'm saying is that some material has been presented here this evening that was very interesting. And I know many people in the community who would have been very interested in seeing this and listening, particularly the presentation we just heard, would have been very interested in hearing that. And because none of this is on the agenda, how is a member of the public to know that?
If I may interject, Margaret, they may see this presentation in whole in YouTube, because we do record.
Yes, of course they can, Ronnie. Yes, they can.
But I understand your point as well. It would have been
my point is that we should tell people what we're going to be talking about, so that if there's a topic of interest that they want to listen into, that they can chime in, that they can listen in real time and actually watch it. This was a very interesting presentation, and I would have wished that it was on the agenda. I would have wished that people would have been able to listen to it. That's all I'm saying, Tom. I'm not talking about requirements or whether or not you're meeting the letter of the law. That's not the point.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah,
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can't wait to read all of it, all 500 pages. No, it's really cool. It's really great, the visualization.
Documentary.
No, yeah, no, it's super interesting. I'm just curious, like, I like all the deliverables, and I think, I love how you've broken it out, and I'm just curious, like, your assessment, is there like any low-hanging fruit that could be initiated as soon as possible? Like, is there anything that, I know like a lot of it is just like reaching out to, state lawmakers and letting them know about the, housing trust, but is there any other sort of low-hanging, easily actionable fruit?
So the first thing you could really look at is that affordable housing overlay zone. That is probably your first and foremost, to bring something like that in and to expand the area. That's very easy to do. It's either making some changes to the current plan or your plan of conservation development and just making that zoning change right away. As well, we made suggestions to the vacant buildings law. You'll see it all highlighted in there. Our suggestions on just putting some more clarifications into it and opening up and making sure that you close off some of the loopholes that are currently there, so that it really helps out. And then as well, it's really just getting that the housing trust fund and getting that funding set up and to work through that. And again, I have offered to Michelle, if she has any questions on this stuff, to come back to us right away. We're happy to answer those questions and to sort of work through some of the process on it. It is a lot of information that has been given over to Michelle as the Housing Justice Director and for the boards to digest. And honestly, a 15-minute presentation is not going to do justice to all the work that has gone into this. And that's why, again, we're offering to sort of help out and move along some of the stuff as you start to implement this.
thank you, Tom.
Yeah,
And let it be clear that you're willing to entertain questions.
Yep.
Your information is on the website along with the president full report.
Yep.
So anybody who is interested should actually check out that.
So I will give you my email address. It is t.madden@bfjplanning.com. And I am happy to answer any questions that arise from this. Like I said, Michelle gave us some great direction, and she's been an absolute pleasure to work with on this. And, I think you guys are very lucky to have her as your Housing Justice Director.
Okay, thank you.
BFJplanning.com.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
that's Madden.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Let's get back to our departmental reports. Michael, can you take this down? Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah,
Also,
thank you. And we can talk more if legal committee wants to get into any more of these in more detail. We can talk about that offline. So thanks, y'all.
next up, Heather. Are you there? You're muted.
I am unmuted now. I'm just going to pull up my screen.
Okay. Oh, no. Going to download a screen and, oh no, there it is. Okay. We've been having internet problems here, folks, in case you're wondering.
Here, I got this apart from Hudson. Yeah, this building is one of the few non-fire. Yeah.
Okay, take it away, Heather.
Okay, so I promised you last month a rough cut of what 2022 looks like. So I'm going to emphasize this is still a rough cut. I spelled rough wrong. I apologize for that too. But overall, it's looking pretty favorable for 2022 right now. And again, a fair amount. So what happens at the end of the year is we have to identify all of the things that rightfully belong in 2022, even if they've happened in 2023. And that's both identifying revenues and making sure we're charging them back. And I won't go into the details of how all that gets done, but it's pretty laborious. And vice versa for charging back expenditures, which is actually a bit easier. So all of that work has not been done yet, but a fair percentage of it has been. So right now we're looking at revenues exceeding expenditures by about 480,000. So that's obviously good news. I did pull out some notable variances, both on the revenues and expenditure side. In terms of things coming in over budget, and this should be no surprise to anybody that's been listening to, the monthly finance report for the last year, but all the taxes basically have been doing well. Lodging tax, utility tax, which was a bit of a surprise, sales tax, which we knew about, Front Street lot, but I will point out that for Front Street lot, we had a pretty small budget estimate for 2022, given the impact that the pandemic had on that revenue. But it looks like it's come back stronger than we thought. Obviously, building permits we've talked about before, and mortgage tax this year came in a little high as well. We did take pretty much all of those trends into account in the 2023 budget. So it will be interesting to see how we do versus budget in 2023, because I think we were reasonably accurate / aggressive with the 2023 numbers. So that'll be an interesting thing to observe. A few things that came in under budget in terms of revenue, not surprisingly, sale of tax acquired property. We're still in the process of trying to evict a tenant who is more than 10 years behind on their property tax. And frankly, that, as far as I know, is at the hands of the county sheriff and their timetables, which I believe got very delayed during COVID as well. Sale of surplus equipment, that is directly to exactly what the fire department talked about earlier today. We had the sale of that truck in for last year. It obviously didn't happen, but it's looking very optimistically positive for this year, so we'll all keep our fingers crossed. And then a couple things, just when people look at them, they just need to know, because of budgetary requirements, we have to budget for the full intake of payments in lieu of taxes, aka pilots, and then we have to budget for the expenditure, which is basically, we take in the pilot money, but then we also have to distribute it back out to the county and to the school. When we actually record that from a financial end of year perspective, we just reduce the amount of revenue by the expenditure. So the expenditures always look like they didn't happen, and the revenue always looks like it didn't come in as high, but it did. It's just the structure that we have. And then things that you're used to seeing, particularly grants. If the grant money doesn't come in for one reason or another, those are often things, and again, those are often things that you'll see coming into encumbrances in the following year. The JAG grant, Michael Hoffman and I discussed, and it has not come to fruition, so we've removed that entirely in 2023. The Spark of Hudson grant is for the Charles Williams Park. Nothing happened with that in either an expenditure nor a revenue standpoint. So you're going to see a resolution next week to modify the 2023 budget for that. That's a little different than the traditional encumbrances, because traditionally the encumbrances, we've all already received the revenue, and we just have to keep carrying over the expense until we've used it up. In this case, we've received neither. So that's not really an encumbrance, it's going to be a budget amendment that you'll see. CHIPS money, it happens all the time. That's a highway improvement programs. It's a variety. There's CHIPS, there's state touring routes, there's emergency weather recovery, and now there's one other one called Pave New York. Generally, DPW spends the majority of those monies every 2 years because they like to build up enough funds to do some, significant projects. All of those basically also have, sort of a break-even impact on the expenditure side, because if we haven't brought in the revenue, it means we also haven't incurred the expenditure. So that's kind of a break-even. You can see on the expenditure side, there's nothing listed over budget because ideally you don't want your expenditures to ever be over budget because you're not supposed to spend any more than you've appropriated, which is why you see budget amendments and budget transfers throughout the year. So there's nothing on the expenditure front that was higher than the ultimate end budget. But in terms of things that came under, and that's a good thing, you know, under expenditures means we didn't spend as much as we had planned. So the contingency was one, we budgeted for a fair amount of HPT retirements. Only one of those happened. We budgeted for some legal expenses. Some of those happened, but not all. And again, pilots we talked about. Donations is another thing that carries over from year to year. So it looks like it's underspent, but those monies, that expenditure budget will just be added to 2023 and has been actually through the encumbrance resolution from last month. And again, as we mentioned, the grants that just sort of break even with each other. So again, so this is a rough cut again at what fund balance looks like. And so what you'll see is not in spendable form has actually increased by a fair amount. That's monies that we have set aside to pay for our employee deductibles on our healthcare plan because we have a high deductible plan to save money, but we pay the deductibles in full for the employees under the MVP plan, which net has been a pretty significant savings to the city. But obviously we have to hold those funds in a way that can only be spent on that. Capital reserve, you can see that we saw a decrease in that, and I'm going to talk to that a little bit more. You can see that the service award program, aka LOSAP, which is the firefighter length of service program that you approve every year, has decreased, and that is largely based, that is handled by, you know, a separate firm that manages all of that. So we get the financials from them, but not surprisingly, they saw a bit of a hit in their investment portfolio because of the dip in the market. And we also had some distributions. So there's a bit of a drop in that. Other restricted is stuff that has been on the books since before I've been here. And we're still trying to figure that out. The assigned appropriated is basically what we use to balance the budget for 2023 for the budget submission. And the assigned unappropriated are basically encumbrances. So you can see there was about an increase of about $100,000 in encumbrances from 2021 to 2022. And then unassigned fund balance, you can see it was an increase of about 450,000, which is good news. But, you know, somewhat offset by the reductions in some of the other fund balances. For example, if we wanted to increase the capital reserve we have for City Hall building improvements, whether to address the asbestos issues or for other things, since we're pretty low right now on what's been approved through a bond resolution and through the original capital fund versus what change orders might come in. We might want to do that, and I would probably suggest that we do to some extent. We might also want to think about creating another capital reserve for other things that we've talked about. We've talked a lot about, you know, vehicle replacement. We've talked a lot about some software improvements on the HPD side, and so that would be another thing that we might want to consider. But overall, you know, again, not the final numbers, but you know, it's not going to be a swing significantly one way or another. So that's 2022. 2023, I just got a few numbers in here because it's still relatively early in the year, but you can see that we're 25% through the year, January, February, and March, and off and on-street parking, we're at about 21% of budget, so that's not bad. Front Street and parking at other permits, we're at already 40%, so that's looking pretty good. Parking tickets, on the other hand, we're a little behind, and I can do a little research and see why that might be. I know there were software issues earlier that I think have been resolved, and I think there's also been some staffing issues. Building permits and fees, you can see that we're about right on target for plumbing permits and a little behind right now in building permits, but that's not to be surprising because of the time of year, frankly. The other things that I usually report on, like mortgage tax, sales tax, lodging tax, none of them are available yet. We haven't received any of those payments that are related to 2023 yet. So as soon as they start coming in, I will start reporting on those. In terms of resolutions, you have one, I believe, in front of you tonight, which is just to cover the accruals of a retired police officer, and we already had that budgeted in contingency, so it's just moving that particular sum out of contingency into the police personal services line so he can be paid out. The Charles Williams Park we already discussed earlier. I have several things with question marks. We had talked about the Housing Justice Director additional expenses. I do not know what the status of that is. I just didn't know if anybody on the council, given the fact that some people on the council also are on HCDPA, might be able to update on that. No problem if you can't, because I will obviously reach out to Michelle. I just didn't have a chance to. The ADA/asbestos thing, we also just talked about briefly in terms of potentially adding to a capital reserve fund. And obviously you heard Peter. So once Peter gets his quotes in, I will touch base with him and we'll figure out where we are. I believe you also got something from Michael Hoffman today about cyber insurance proposals. That's another unfunded thing. So I'm assuming there'll be a budget amendment for that at some point and probably can be available for, probably can be and should be available for the formal meeting, because we're going to want to sign off on that, I presume. And then, as I said earlier, something that we should discuss, obviously it doesn't have to be tonight in any great detail, but do we want to refund any of the capital reserves? You know, we also, HPD has been talking, I'm sorry, fire department's been talking about the need for a new vehicle, ordering it potentially this year and not receiving it till 2025. So we do have a fire apparatus reserve that we could start to refund. We could potentially refund the City Hall improvement reserve and or add an additional capital reserve for some of the other expenditures we know are coming up. And this would be a good time to do it since the fund balance is looking pretty decent. In terms of financial reporting, still waiting on the final 2021 audit, but I think we're very close. It's all in the auditor's hands at this point. So the AUD, which is the annual update document, which is all the stuff that I described in 2022 and the stuff that we still need to do to finalize 2022 all goes into that. And that all has to be finalized before we can file with the state. The band payoff, I had a good meeting with our financial advisors. We're going to have to pay off the ban. I've started to do some work to determine how much we can reduce the ban by, because we have received some reimbursements at some of the projects that have happened, including stormwater separation and the water main on Washington Street. So instead of now having to do the whole thing, we will only have to finance the remaining part, which was always going to be the city's obligation. I think, and I believe that financial advisors agree with me, but once we get the numbers closer, we'll find out. We may have enough to take some of those funds and take them out of the bond anticipation note and turn them into a long-term bond. So that would probably be, you know, Washington Street main, stormwater separation, fire truck at a minimum, and potentially the ADA improvements as well, depending on the timing of those. So that's going to be a fair amount of stuff to figure out. And then just operational, the two things I want to point out here are we do need to engage an auditor for 2022. Obviously 2022 financials are not complete until we file the AUD. They're not finalized, so we don't need them right this second, but we are going to need them soon. So Tom, maybe you and I can touch base on that outside of this, or if you want to create a task force, then I can interact with them. You just need to let me know. And a new piece of information is that we're also going to be required to produce a single federal audit for 2022. That is something that has not happened in my work lifetime here. Basically, if you, the number has changed, but basically, if you as a municipality get more than $750,000 in federal grant support in any given fiscal year, you have to have a separate audit just for that. That was not anticipated, so we will need to identify an auditor to perform that as well. Not to say they couldn't be the same one. But it's also going to require a budget amendment because that was not something that was included. It may, it does, the expense does rightfully belong with the projects that, you know, accepted that federal money. But that's going to take a little bit of figuring to figure out. And as I said, I've never done one before, so I also have to figure out A, how it works, and B, we have $750,000 in federal funding from one single project alone, which is the stormwater separation. But I believe we also have taken in some other federal funding through the COPS grant. So I don't know how that works, if they audit them both together, if they audit them separately, or if they just audit the big one. So I'm going to have to make some calls to some auditors and maybe to the state controller to figure out how that works. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Council members, questions? Okay, we'll move right along.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
Got it.
Chief Moore. You're on. Greetings, everybody.
This place here?
Sure.
Hi, everybody. I'll get through this as fast as possible. The mandatory reporting of body camera reviews, which 95 random picked body cameras were reviewed by the supervisor's administration. And it was forwarded to the mayor's office pursuant to the park committee orders. The second one is a handout. Dave, if you could help me out. Dave, you got it. First thing is the monthly section 9 reporting. Which Dave, Lieutenant Miller will hand out to you. Yeah. I'll wait until you get it so you can follow along. Thank you, Lieutenant. So, first thing up is the use of force evidence, which there was 2. One involved the displaying of the officer of his taser, pointing the taser, but not discharging it. And the second one was actually physical force used by an officer to bring his defendant to the ground during a bar fight. There were no injuries in either incident. No duty to intervene issues came up. We see the total numbers of bookings and arrests at 61, the total charges of 93, 8 emotionally disturbed person calls, and I think it's the second one in a row we haven't had any kind of overdose or Narcan use. The breakdown of charges are on the 3rd and 4th pages. You see a spike in trespass, harassment, and that has to do with the ticketing of people to the park, unsheltered people, EDP, emotionally disturbed people. Otherwise, you can read the different charges across the board. It's pretty uniform, without any kind of indication of a particular crime or incident that's happened in the month of March. And I could, if you look at that at your leisure, any questions, be fine.
That's your open containers.
What's that?
Open
Open containers, also, I think you see, I think when was the spike there, cut path?
Yeah.
Now, the one also for that one. Yeah, the one, I was gonna bring that up on the one incident, use of force with a domestic. One of our supervisors was injured. Thank you. Subduing a person in domestic violence, and he's out on extended sick leave. Next one is because it's the quarter, it's the quarterly report. Yeah. Vehicle and traffic report. Now, as Dave hands it out, you might recollect out of the park committee, or even after the park committee, after some discussions. The council was interested in the ethnicity, demographics of people ticketed and what the particular violations are. And the breakdown is here. What I find useful is most useful from this report is the percentage of ticketing is aligned with our demographics of our city. So we look to see if something's out of line there. And if you look at the figures as to what the violations are, where they were written, once again, I don't see any disturbing trend for the quarter. And we do see that ethnicity in the third page shows that the breakdown is pretty much along our lines of 19% African American, 84% Caucasian, and 15.9% of people that identify as something other than those ethnicities. Also, the locations, we can go through all the violations where the tickets were written. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is on one of the pages, it shows a spike on Columbia Street.
That was my question.
Yeah, and the reason for that, Ryan, is because that category, the officer didn't put the specific crossroad, so that could have been anywhere in any, so you got to collect it there.
Got it.
So that's really not a spike. The only other thing is we did write 3 DWIs last month, which is high for our city, and that was one of those, or 2 of those was tagged to special enforcement over, I think, St. Patrick's Day. As far as the monthly activity goes, quickly, the 1st of March, we band staff attended the very popular school board meeting to address school violence. And I think that meeting was so well attended. There was hundreds of people there. Dr. Spindler was able to give some assurances about the policies they have in place and what they're doing to address that. On the 2nd of March, we attended the first mental health court graduation over Hudson City Court, which is an initiative by Judge Roberts. 6th of March, there was a significant arrest on Columbia Street, where 2 pistols, $30,000 in cash, and 1 kilogram of cocaine was seized. That was the New York State Police case with Hudson Police assisting. The 8th of March, we attended the Quest Tower breakfast meeting to support the student programs, especially the criminal justice programs as a feeder for our department. We had a swearing in of an officer on March 13th, and also promotion of John Moranti to the detective. The swearing in of the officer on the 13th who resigned 8 days later after 1 day at the academy. So that was very discouraging. I heard some discussion earlier about revenues from parking. We did have one of our parking enforcement guys out with COVID for extended period of time, and also we had 1 resignation. So on the 22nd, I started interviews and did interview people regarding his replacement. I think we'll quickly get a replacement for Dave, who served us for 1 year and did a great job. That's it.
Thank you, Chief. Questions from council members?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, council members online with questions? So we'll move along to DPW.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. You're up next, Rob.
Okay. thanks. And sorry, my report wasn't there. I was in my outbox. I thought I sent it this afternoon, but I didn't. So we'll just have to hang on my every word.
No pictures?
Okay. Yeah, I've got pictures right there.
Thank God.
So sewer department, septic revenue for February was 29,000, which is pretty much it's under what we pace for a monthly average, but it's certainly better than we get most February. So obviously it was a mild month. We had a mild winter, so that's probably the greatest contributor to it. Part of our annual maintenance, and that's what a lot of what this time of year is. These are the tree planters that you'll see on Union Street. So there's a lot of leaves that were kind of stuck in there over the winter. We go in there and clean them out, remove the grates, proof up the ground a little bit, and then put up the grates back on. We also have a bunch of annual reports that are done, and the last of those reports are done in March. So the annual water flow certification was sent in earlier in this month. We also had our annual DEC inspection this past week, and so we expect to get the results of that, but everything seemed favorable at the time, although it's been known to happen that from the time the regulator leaves your facility till the time they start typing, that it's almost like there was two different inspections, but we're optimistic. One of the things that has come up is our speedies permit is going to be need to updated, and we've honestly, we had a speedies permit for 2.8 million gallons a day average that was back from the 1970s. In our 2007 consent order, we were required to build a new plant and expand that capacity to 16.9 million gallons, which we did. And as soon after the completion of that construction project, we submitted what's referred to as a municipal 2A, which is basically a regulatory instrument to say, this is what our current capabilities are. You need to modify our speedies permit to reflect our current capabilities. And nothing had, it was in 2013 we submitted that. So 2015, our speedies permit was expiring, and so they gave us what's referred to as a SAPA, which is an administrative review from DEC, which means our old permit is still in force and effect until they do what they need to do to give us a new permit. And there that's sat for the last 7 years. So now we're being told that they're finally going to work on it, and they want a significant amount of information, to which I responded to DEC that we submitted this information at no small cost to the City of Hudson taxpayer in 2013. And the fact that you guys sat on it, that's not really a Hudson problem, that's an agency problem. Of course, the response came back, thank you very much, your concern is duly noted. Your submission is due June 15th. And so, I mean, what are you going to do? It's their DEC. So that's it. We have to, provide a litany of new data, and at some point our permit will be increased to reflect what the capabilities of the process actually are and have been for over a decade. Also, there was an EPG grant, an environmental planning grant that we received about a year and a half ago, and so we've really started kicking that into full gear. Last year we had a couple of other capital projects that consume most of our time for sewer, so we're getting into this administrative one right now. The goal of this grant is that it'll help us be better prepared for future grant opportunities for capital projects by quantifying what's actually out there, as opposed to just it's being speculative. It'll be actually concrete and quantitative and qualitative. Going to water, there was a hydrant that was knocked down over the winter. This is down the end of Mill Street, and it's an older style hydrant anyway, and everything on it was pretty old. So what we did is we cut out everything from the lateral. This is a new Hymax. This is a new lateral, a new isolation valve, T, riser, and then a new hydrant on top. So that was backfilled and put into service. So that's one of the things they've been working on. We also have some maintenance at the water plant. There's actually a dry hydrant that's on this detention pond that can be used to supplement water flow in Rossman Avenue and up at Academy Hill. But the reeds were, getting a little too thick there, the cattails, so we cleared all that out. If you recall, there was a heavy wet snow between, late in the month and, this was part of this is Reservoir Road out where you see the part of the dam over here. The town of Taconic wasn't actually able to get through there. They were kind of a slip sliding. There were some trees that were down. So we actually had to punch through with one of our smaller trucks to open it up so our chemical feed building could have access. We did submit another one of those annual reports is our annual water withdrawal. And this is something that's really intended for DEC or the DEP, the New York City water system, where they pull water from basically the Schoharie region, the Delaware region, the Hudson region, the Crow, and all of these river systems throughout the state. And then they put it into aqueducts and send it to New York City. So, I think they wanted them to do it and they make all of us do it. So we take water out of, we divert it from the Taconic Creek, which is, right here to the Churchtown Reservoir. And, we have the capacity of 3 million gallons a day. Our average is about 1.12 and our high was 1.17 last year. So we have to go through a kind of a monthly tabulation of total gallons that we took, which is raw water, what we return, which is finished water, and consumed is basically water is kind of lost to the treatment process and to the filtration process. So that's where we kind of come up with the delta for them. And that's it. So that's just, another report that's due to DEC. One of our traffic lights went out on State up on Fairview and Green a couple of weeks ago. And when the processor died, it switched to all flashing while red, which, ironically, flashing red is still a working traffic signal. But for whatever reason, you hit that intersection and people get confused by the fact that they got to kind of take their turn. So we tried to make the one that was worked there was fried. We ordered a new one, but it was going to be a day or so before the replacement could come in. There ended up being a small accident, at which point we went to the light at State and Green and pulled that one out, left that blinking 4 ways because that is just a dedicated 4-way intersection, and swapped it out and then put the Fairview green light back on. The good news is when the new intersection is done, we'll keep this, so we'll have spares of all of these parts. But this just gives you an idea of what else is out there. This is another panel at 4th and Warren. So you can see the high degree of, neatness that's involved with keeping our traffic lights working. So not to show you how the sausage is made, but some of it's not that pretty. This is, there was a question about solar panels on the roof of the DPW garage. And so this is just during one of the rain events where you can see the rain. This was just one point where the rain is pouring through. The old expression only leaks when it rains. The roof is original, and you can see there's some legendary names, 1967. So that's, it's over 50 years old. The roof should be replaced probably anyway, but if you're going to put any kind of fixtures up there, it's definitely going to need to be replaced.
Rob, we should call. I might have found you some money for that. I'll send you an email.
Okay, I love money. So this is down at Promenade Hill, and they'd scraped down the wrought iron fence. We did complete the Promenade Hill DRI project, but that was for the first and second tier. There really wasn't any. There was a very tiny bit of the project that was on the third tier. So this was part that was determined that DPW could do in kind, and so we've scraped it down. They're painting it now. They should be finished by the end of the week. So cleaning that up, and it also along with cleaning, we sent the guys over because we did have a mild winter. So this is obviously the rivers here. This is Promenade Hill. They went through and clear cut all that sumac, so that way you don't have to worry about your view being obstructed this summer. And cemeteries just had some more storm damage. I don't know what it is. We've had these high little cells of winds that have come through, and they're just ripping stuff down left and right. As far as the Ferry Street Bridge, so I have, almost the most excellent news. It's the sort of really better than good, but not totally excellent. We have submitted the final PS&E, which is plans, specifications, and estimates to Region 8. This now includes all of the updated easements. We had to redo some of the forms, the the NEPA, which is the federal version of seeker, because they're only good for a couple of years, so we had to redo the determination. There was another one, SEER, which is a significant environmental impact and economic impact form. You know, these things just time out. We just have to resubmit them. You know, DBE assessment form or right-of-way clearance certificates, which we've had those for probably 5 years now. And certificate of construction documents, a regional 8 PS&E plan specification checklist. And, you know, most importantly in that is a request for authorization from DOT to allow us to advertise. So hopefully, you know, this was submitted earlier this week, so hopefully they can turn it around within a couple of weeks. And once we get that authorization, then barring no further questions, we'll be putting this out on the street, and you know, then the fun begins. So, you know, it's getting there. It's as close as it's gonna be, man. It's DOT's as the final hurdle. So anyway, that's it for this one.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions from council members? Peter, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move right along then. By the way, notice we had a communication from the American Legion Post inviting us all to Memorial Day event. Okay, we have just 5 resolutions, and they're all pretty simple. First resolution is appointing the Commissioner of Deeds. You haven't even seen it. I'll introduce it. That's Arthur, second.
Oh, okay, I'll second. I'm told to, thanks.
That's how this works, right? Democracy?
Yeah.
The second resolution designates the Register Star as the city official paper. Arthur. Second.
Yeah. That is not a democracy. Not there.
Amber? Amber, okay. The third resolution authorizes the acceptance of $25,132 donation from the Hotel Plunge organized by the Friends of Hudson Youth on behalf of the Fire Department, Water Rescue, and Dive Team.
I'll introduce.
Now it's gonna be Theo, beat you to it, and Arthur is second.
Take that credit.
This next resolution, this is a little more complex, is the resolution awarding the various amounts to the city's from the city's event committee, which was done last week, wasn't it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks ago. And was attended by a committee, Arthur, Ryan, Dominic, I think was there, and Vicky. Can I have an introduction?
I'll introduce.
Ryan?
I'd like to thank Michael Hoffman for letting me fend to figure out how to set up the owl alone that day. I'm sorry, it's okay.
And Arthur's the second. And lastly. there's some-
Tom, I had a question on this.
on what?
We're going to discuss this or not?
If you'd like to, sure, sorry. I didn't see your name.
Just for the committee that's assigning the awards, it's not a lot of money for any of them. But can you provide the rationale? I mean, it just seems to me in a lot of these, it might have been easier to just assign the same amount to everybody. But, you know, we got 2,500, 3,000 for some, and then we got 5,000 for others. What was the rationale for 5,000 for Flag Day and for Operation Unite versus 2,500 pretty much for a lot of the others? So I'm sure there's a logic to that, but can you just talk about that?
Yes, so I mean, some of the logic, I'll invite you to start attending the meetings in person so you can hear them to start. The second is, of course, that we're looking at the ones that are bringing the largest group of people. So over 25,000 end up for Flag Day that's here. And that's our restaurants that in turn has a more trickle effect on the economy itself. And we tried to go more equal for those engagements that were getting off the ground. A little bit more. There were some that we weren't able to support last year. There were some that we were only minimally able to support last year that we were able to do a little bit more for this year, such as Bindlestiff. We were able to bring the Hudson Festival Orchestra in because they did bring a lot of people into the waterfront itself. So the way that the meeting went down, though, is that everybody came in with their own sort of ideas, and we just hashed it out, the four of us, in the public forum to figure out exactly how we would put the 30K out.
And both those have, longstanding Operation and Flag Area are the longest standing events, so.
Two in the county almost.
Right, so they have a good attendance record.
So I guess the only one that I would ask a question about, really, like, I'm looking at this, and we had this conversation last year as well, Ryan. And the only one that I would say, because it's kind of sort of getting off the ground, is Juneteenth. And I'm just wondering if 500 could be moved from one of the others to Juneteenth. I just throwing it out there as an idea.
I mean, you're more than welcome to make what recommendation you think it should come from, Margaret.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that you guys engaged in detailed discussion when you arrived at these numbers. So that was the only reason I was asking that question, because in the spirit of what you just said, of things that are sort of just getting off the ground, you try to, yes.
The question back to you is, where would you like to take money from? Please let the public
Where would
know.
I take the money from? Possibly Sloop. Because I wouldn't take it from anybody that was only getting 2,500. So I would only, I would only look at groups that were getting more than 2,500.
Sloop Club is 8 weeks of continuous programming.
Correct.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
I said Sloop Club is 8 weeks of continuous programming, and it's already.
So how about Hudson Flag Day?
Free, yep.
How about taking 500 from Hudson Flag and giving that to Juneteenth?
We could do that. I think it's gonna take a decision for the council in the next meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying. I just want, honestly, Ryan, I'm not questioning the results. I was just wanted to understand the logic, and in that.
There was a full meeting for the logic, so that's my
And
point.
Margaret, some of the expenditures on the application, you have to go through and see what really are some of the expenditures on some of them.
Do you have the Excel sheet available?
No, not with me. It's on my
No.
laptop.
Can you send Margaret the Excel sheet?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of.
Are those meetings recorded at all?
It's available online. So
Are the meetings recorded or no?
that meeting was not because Michael left me in charge.
But I'm sure there's.
It's available online.
I'm sure there's documents.
Yeah. Okay, where was I? The fifth resolution is a transfer of funds for the police department retirement expenses. This is a transfer from the contingency budget. We plan on a possible retirement, and it's happening, so that's this. Arthur, and second? Amber, thank you. Okay, that's all the resolutions for tonight. So anything else anybody would like to bring up? Theo?
Yeah, I was appointed the Public Safety Committee Chair, and I've been taking meetings and have been probably like trying to over prepare and set the agenda, but I think it's just best to get something on the book. So just be on the lookout for the next few days to a week for just honing in on date, and hopefully the end of this month, early May. But I know there's a lot of conflicting stuff, so.
You can pull our names out of a hat.
No, it's not, I don't think, I mean, I have to talk to Tom and see if this is, obviously legal, but I don't think I want it just to be something where it's more of just a meeting and a discussion place.
That's
And
kind of the idea.
yeah, I'm not assigning anyone to the committee. I've been in touch with a lot of different organizations, from the school, to the police, to, the housing coalitions. And I think it's getting them on the books to be there and just sort of be a meeting space to sort of share resources and different issues that different organizations are facing across the city. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, Margaret, for your consideration. Okay.
Okay, with that, okay, second,
Margaret, do you have another question?
No, I was just saying, okay.
Oh, okay.
second. Ryan, all in favor, say one of the same aye. Okay, and Art, and Theo, you got